Hi guys, and welcome to another Wargame Red Dragon tutorial video with me, Bubblebox, and today we're moving on with the infantry and we're going to have a look at the light riflemen, the fire support and the anti-tank gun infantry. So to start off with the light riflemen, so the light riflemen really are halfway between the rifleman squads and the ATGM squads. They have good anti-infantry capabilities and can also defend themselves against enemy infantry, and have decent, not the best, but decent anti-tank weapons that's better than those of an infantry rifle squad, but worse than those of a specialist ATGM squad. And they are either generally regularly trained, but there's a few that are shock trained as well. Now, not all the countries have them. As you can see, these are all of the light infantry squads that there are in the game. Those that do have them are the North Koreans, up here, these Gongbyongs, the Russians with the Gorno, the Brits with the Gurkhas, the Highlanders, the Canadians, these guys for the Japanese, the French, East Germans, and the Americans and the Polish. So we're going to concentrate again on the Americans and the Russians, but as I say, as per normal, everything I say about the Americans and the Russians is applicable to the other countries as well, probably with one or two little exceptions. So we'll get rid of the other countries and start by having a look at the Americans. Now, first of all, as you can see, they've got three weapons, just like the light riflemen. They've got the M16 primary, which I'm not going to go over again. They've got a static machine gun, so it has to be still to be fired. And then they've got this M47 Dragon guided missile. This time we've got 8 of these guys. And they've got an AP power of 10 and accuracy of 35, so pretty, not the best weapon in the world. But if you go up to the 1990 riflemen, they've got the same M16 and the same machine gun and an upgraded Dragon. With this time it's got a range of 1,925, whereas before it had a range of 1,575. So it's a much better range and a better accuracy and a slightly better AP power as well to shoot sort of light medium tanks and armour vehicles. 10-men squads, not the fastest things in the world, regularly trained. The Americans have also got these mountaineers, which are kind of halfway between the light riflemen and the riflemen. So the mountaineers, oops, I didn't mean to do that, let's pin the mountaineers. So the mountaineers, they've got, if we compare them to the light riflemen, they've got the same M16, they've got an M60 machine gun, which is probably not quite as good as the M240, although there's not a lot in it, to be honest. But they've got the upgraded, one of the slightly upgraded Dragon 2 with the same range but a better accuracy and a slightly better AP power, so it costs a little bit more. And if you compare them to the light rifleman 90s, and of course the light rifleman 90s cost a little bit more, but they've got the slightly better range on that Super Dragon than the Mountaineers, and a slightly better machine gun as well. So yeah, we've also got the transports, of course, as per normal. You've got the Humvee, the Huey, I'm not going to go over these again, a Black Hawk with a nice minigun, twin Huey with a minigun as well. Exactly the same for the light rifleman 90s, and the Mountaineers only come in this Chinook, although these Chinooks aren't too bad. They've got a minigun as well, and they cost 25, and they can shoot ground units and other helicopters. And moving on to the Russians, and the Russians have got these Gorno Strekies, and if we have a look at their stats, you can see they look quite impressive to actual with the nice transport there. But the Gorno Strekies, you can see they're fairly similar in a way to the light riflemen of the Americans, in that they've got their AK-74 again. They've got a decent machine gun, it's static, not close quarters, and they've got this Meters, it's called a Meters, fires Saklos missiles, 8 of those guys. And it's worth just noting the heat and the guide as well while you're having a look at these things. I mentioned that for the right one. So heat, of course, as before, does the same damage depending on whatever the distance from the target, and guide means that the operator has to stand still until his missile has hit the target, which generally these infantry do anyway. So you can't fire them on the move. So yeah, so it's a similar kind of story to the Light Riflemen really. They're strength of 10, same kind of speed, very, very similar. And as with the Light Riflemen, you've got this upgrade, the Gorno Strekies 90s with just a better ATGM gun really. Everything else is exactly the same, with a better accuracy, much better AP power, actually 26. That's quite immense if it gets a shot off, but the range isn't fantastic, still at 1.5. But again, they're cool. You know, these things are meant for be used in buildings or in the mountains where the ranges don't really matter quite so much as on open ground. Now these guys come in a range of choppers this time, so you've got your basic MI8 there, you've got an MI8 with a machine gun there called the MI8 TV, then you're going upwards more towards your attack choppers then, and they certainly go up in value as well. They're going to cost you a lot, especially to get these MI24Ds in. So yeah, so they've got nice choppers to bring them in, although the choppers are quite expensive, do get quite expensive towards the top end. So moving on to the anti-tank gun infantry units. Now not every country has a specific anti-tank gun infantry unit. The ones that don't are the USA, Canada, Denmark, Norway, South Korea and China. Every other country do have them, as you can see here. Now because the USA doesn't have one, I'm going to use the Brits as my example for these guys. Now they come in small squads of just 2 men, and as such they have a strength of just 2 and are easily killed if discovered by the enemy. The price varies from 10 points all the way up to 30 points. There's a 30-point Swedish one down there with its very powerful missile, and the prices do vary depending on the quality of the ATGM missile. They are a good counter to tanks, being quite cheap relative to the tanks, and can kill tanks very well indeed. Now these units are best used when they're hidden and to snipe basically at armour, and also they can be used to set ambushes for armoured trucks, for tanks and for pretty much anything apart from infantry. Now if you're lucky, they can, or I'll say lucky or skillful, they can also sometimes fire without even being seen by the enemy, especially when they're firing against an enemy that has a poor visibility or poor optics. As do some of the tanks. Now they do have quite a long range, and so can often get a shot or two off even before the enemy gets a chance to respond and fire back. They are also able to damage and destroy even the best heavy tanks, especially the ones with the more potent AP power, especially if the infantry are positioned to get side or rear shots on the tanks. So if we have a look first at the British one as an example. So the Brits, let's get rid of the rest of them actually. Get the Brits up. So the Brits have a 2, they have a Milan 1 and a Milan 2, and the Milan 1, again as you can see, basic weaponry here, just a very basic primary weapon, no machine gun or anything. The weapon really is this Milan 1. Heat again, guided again, we've gone over that before. It's got 6 missiles with a nice range of 2,450. Accuracy isn't brilliant, only 35%, and they do have to be still to fire this weapon. And they've got an AP power which is pretty good of 17. And then you can go to the upgraded one, which is the Milan 2 rocket, and this is a lot better. It's got the same range, but it's got a slightly better accuracy but a much better AP power. So if one of these lands, it's going to do a lot of damage. And even this one with an AP power of 17 will do damage, especially if it gets maybe a side shot on a tank. Apart from that, not much else to say apart from, just keep them well in cover, and if they're spotted, move them around a bit. They've got the usual trucks and helicopters that I've spoken about in the previous tutorial to bring in, so you can bring them in trucks along the ground, or you can bring them and fly them to destinations and try and hide them, even get them behind enemy lines perhaps if you're trying to be really sneaky in your choppers as well. So moving on to the Russian anti-tank gun infantry, they've got quite a nice range. They've got first of all these factorias, which are the more basic model for the Russians with 6 Saklos missiles again, and range 2450, accuracy 45%, AP power 16, the cost 15. Everything else is pretty much the same, very slow of course, and a range of vehicles to bring those guys in, and then they can be upgraded to the Patur Conkers if you want, or upgraded. It's actually a different weapon. Well, actually it's not, it's the Saklos missiles again, but slightly better AP power of 20. And then finally, let's just pin up the Conkers this time. You've got the Patur Conkers M, which again is a slight upgrade, a better accuracy of 50%, so on average you'll fire 2 of these and one of them is going to hit, but a really nice AP power of 23 for a cost of 35, and again a range of units to bring these guys in on. So finally we're going to have a look at these guys, and these are a new addition to Red Dragon, and these are the fire support units. Now I haven't used these a great deal. Initially when I looked at them they looked just like a sort of middling ground between infantry and sort of ATGM units with the strength of 5 and stuff, so I wasn't over impressed with them, but I'm going to try them a little bit in the decks, I think, because they've got one very interesting thing about one of their weapons which I'll point out in a moment. Now you can't get these in all the nations. You can get them in most of the nations but not all the nations. I don't think the Russians have any, but the Americans do, so we'll start off having a look at the American ones for the blue 4 side, and we'll have a look at the Chinese for the when we come on to have a look at the red 4 side. So these are the American s'mores. Strength of 5 as I said, and here they are. Good for gain for sniping, I guess, for hiding in tree lines, buildings and stuff like that, as are most of the infantry. Averagey sort of speed. These are shock troops, so they're quite powerful even though there's only 5 of them. I think most of the others are actually regular troops. I don't know why these are shock troops for the Americans, I'm not quite sure, but they've got the standard M16 anyway, we're not going to go over that. But then they've got this very interesting looking weapon, this small rocket launcher. Okay-ish kind of range, a little bit short maybe, but okay-ish. Very nice accuracy and a nice AP power of 21. Now if you look at the stats up here, you've got heat, which we've gone over before, stats, so it has to be still when it blah 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 when it fires, but then it's got an area of effect, so its HE value applies over an area of effect, and you think HE value for a rocket propelled grenade, well yes it does. Rocket propelled missile, yes it does, and it can fire against infantry because it has an HE power of 2 and a very nice suppression effect as well, so that's quite interesting. So these units are quite cheap. I think they range from 10 or they're only 10 or 15 points for all the nations, so they're very cheap, quite vulnerable with 5, but they've got this really interesting weapon which might be worth just trying out. Again, I'm not that experienced with it, I haven't used it a great deal, so I'm not too sure how effective it will be in game, but it just looks interesting. So if we have a look at the red 4 one, and we're going to have a look at the Chinese, I think, for the red 4 side. Here we are. So the Chinese have got these guys, I'll call them the Shashus. Clearly a mispronunciation, here they are with their cool sunglasses on. I don't think the Americans had any sunglasses. Not that's going to make a great deal of difference. They are regularly trained here. Strength of 5 again. Standard military, standard primary. Longer range this time than the Americans, as you can see, with their main weapon, this sort of recoilless sort of cannon gun, whatever you want to call it. Accuracy of just 40%, not fantastic. 10 missiles again, which is really good. AP power of 12, and this HE power again of 2 with a nice suppression. So quite similar to the Americans, a better range, regular rather than shock, and slightly worse accuracy and AP power than the Americans, but still interesting again. So guys, that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be finishing off the infantry in the next video before moving on to something else. Please do comment, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.